Hey guys, it's Eric Weingartner with Weingartner Racing. Today's video is about me dynoing my 565 big block Chevy that's it from the Camaro. Anyway, this video is about that. I'm going to go ahead and warn you, yeah, this part's a voiceover and there might be a lot of that just simply because I didn't do a good job of filming some of this stuff. But I will tell you some of the difficulties that went with this and how much power and everything it made. I love the engine. It just had some issues. But anyway, here it is, 565 big block. Let's see. Right now, it's got the dyno headers on it, by the way. That's 2 1/8, and they have a 3.5 inch collector. I actually did dyno it with the headers that are on the car, but you'll hear more about that later in the video. But anyway, let's get to what this actually is. Bear with this photo video thing here for a second because it's there's a reason the engine looks the way it does, which I'll get to in the video. Okay, like I said, the engine looks kind of disastrous right now because it didn't look as cool as it did when I was on the dyno because the carburetors are off and the stuff's off, which I'll get to in a minute. But I wanted to, before you watch more of the dyno runs, probably best to describe the engine so I don't get asked so much in the comments. Plus, I'm sure you want to know, hey, what is this thing? I mean, it's a 565 big block Chevy, but I mean, that's pretty vague. So let's talk about it. This is a Darts Big M Sportsman block. I don't have the billet caps. It has a SCAP 4340 standard weight crankshaft. It doesn't even have the center counterweights. It has Molnar connecting rods in it. They're 4340 forged stuff. Has the JE pistons, and they're like the ones with the inboard moved pins. In other words, the pin itself is a little bit narrower, so it doesn't weigh as much. It yields 15 2-to-1 compression ratio with these heads. And that's where things get kind of tricky. Now, if you notice the heads, it says 3 extra. Oh. This head, I had Brodix make special for me, so when I went porting, I could kind of change things up. This is a 335 oval port head, and if you get that, it's a standard, it's not CNC ported, obviously, it's CNC bowl blended in chambers, but I had them change some things. One of the things I had them do was move the push rod slot over so that I can make it bigger through there, and I also had them put in a bigger exhaust port, and that main reason for that was just it saves me from porting so much. Because yeah, I could make the same port shape on a smaller port. It just takes longer and I don't have a lot of time. You would think, man, you grind heads all day. You'd have plenty of time to do your own. No, I have nothing hardly to work on my own stuff. So anyway, they have a 2375 intake valve and they have a 1850 exhaust valve. This is a 5/16 stem. And it's a steel intake and exhaust valve. You might be like, whoa, where did you find that valve? Because that'd be pretty rare to have a 2375 intake valve and a 5/16 stem. Yeah, I'm gonna keep that one a little bit of a secret just because I'm afraid I'll never be able to get them again. No, I'm not, I'm going to tell you. You can get them from Brodix, or at least you could before COVID. I don't know if you can get them now. The trick part was getting a 55-degree valve job on them with 3 back cuts or 2 back cuts. But I did. The heads end up flowing 478, and they're still in standard location. So the valve center line is not moved at all. So anyway, there's that. The intake that I'm running is this Edelbrock 7085. It's their newer tunnel ram. Do not confuse this with their Victor rams. This thing is amazing. Obviously, when you see the power numbers, like, it's not too bad. But you won't notice this. You see that? That's a spacer plate. And I know you're like, whoa, what about that? That's a crack. That's what I thought too. I actually filmed this twice because the first time I was like, man, that looks like a crack. No, it's like casting. It's not leaking water, but it did scare me a little bit because you could see it down here too. It must be where they put the 2 pieces together, the cope and drag. But anyway, what I had to do is, this is a spacer plate, this piece of aluminum through here. And the reason why is, even though it's oval port, it's not like your standard 781 oval ports. The oval port's raised up probably 1/2 inch or more off the deck. So because of that, to get the intake port to line up with the heads, you have to raise it up. In order to do that, you add spacer plates, and of course a gasket, and there's a thinner one there. So that's pretty much that part. Now it does have a gesso belt drive, which I never really mess with advancing or anything like that. And it does have a comp cam solid roller in it, and I'll show you the specs in just a minute. Yeah, I'm gonna give them to you, I don't mind telling you. It has Morel 904 lifters in it. They do have needles, so nothing's fancy there. This pan is wicked cool, but god dang, it's expensive if you ever want to look into one of these. It's a aluminum one from Moroso. It's got the kickouts on the side. It's a pain in the rear to put on, by the way. Those are like 700 bucks. It has a Moroso, not Moroso, but a Titan gear rotor oil pump on it, so it's still wet sump. But those Titan pumps are pretty cool. Yeah, it's T&D shaft rockers because I told you I moved over the push rods like you have to run them. I think the ratio, and I can't remember off the top of my head, but I think it's 185 on intake and 1.8 on exhaust. It had two 1050 Dominators set up top. It has an aerospace vacuum pump. I have no idea what it ever pulls for vacuum. I have this thing sitting over there, that check valve, and I've never touched it from the time I've gotten it. So it could be 0 or it could be 20. Although I doubt it. I heard these things could barely pull 7. So anyway, that's about it. It's got crank trigger, and we use the dyno ignition, which is MSD6AL2. What fuel did I run? I'll show you later. But anyway, here's the cam. And I'll be like, why are you sharing the cam? Because even now, this cam isn't bad, but even now I'd probably update it from what this is. So it's a 275, 286 on a 112. That's at 50 thousandths, by the way. It says 877, but really when you do the 185, I think it's like 937 lift and like by 877 on exhaust. So yeah, it's got a lot of lift. This is like a 515 intake lobe, and I think that's the biggest lobe you could put in a standard cam journal block. It seems like it does fine. Anyway, the ballast spring on it is a PSI 426 RML, in case you're wondering on that deal. That's good to like 9, depending on how you set it up. You can set it up to like a 950 lift, but you just have to deal with your spring pressures on the seat and stuff. Anyway, let's watch some dyno pulls and see what you think, and then I'm gonna tell you what I didn't like and the reason why the engine's like this now. Found it.
Really, the only stumble it has is actually as I'm going up.
Yeah.
So
$1,061. Okay, I'm going to show you the dyno results from the best pool, and then I'll show you some other stuff just for fun. This is the fuel I ran on it. So this is the Sunoco SR18. It's 118 octane. You might say, you should try VPU Q16. I bet it'd be great. It probably would be if I could get it. For whatever reason, there's no VP dealers here. Like I'm in the Tulsa, Oklahoma area. You can't get it. So if I ordered it, because I thought, I'll just order it, how much could it possibly be? It's like, it ends up costing for like a pill this much, almost $200 by the time it gets to you. And I'm just not doing that. This is expensive enough. I want to say this was just a 5-gallon pail was $122. That's what it was for this 5-gallon pail. And I might be off a few dollars, but it was like 120 or something. It was expensive. And just to give you an idea, how come you didn't make more pools? Because you might be saying, why didn't you try to fix this on the dyno? One, I didn't think it was this far off because the car seemed like it ran pretty good. Because you probably listen to one of the runs, you're like, oh, okay. I think I know what's wrong, right? Well, thought I did too, but I didn't bring enough stuff to fix it, which we'll talk about in a second. But even though I brought about 8 gallons worth of fuel, it will eat some fuel. So I probably could have made more, but I didn't have the rest of the stuff. So anyway, let's get to it. This is the best dyno run. So in case you're wondering, 1,061 horsepower. That was its best, which isn't bad, by the way. This engine has been on the dyno before, and I didn't build it. And I have to give the guy some credit because the engine does work pretty good. Brian Gaines from Gaines Grinding built this engine. You're like, why didn't you build your own engine? Because I don't have time. This thing would have taken me like 5 years to build from the little amount of time I have to work on anything. So I trusted him to do it, gave him all the parts and everything, and said put it together, and he did, and we dynoed initially. And on his dyno, made 1120. But on Dunsworth dyno, which is this one I trust probably the most, it made 1,061. And that one I truly believe. If you look at its peak torque, it actually made 815 at 5,600. I should point out, what did I change? Well, from the time I came, we'll pull up that graph real quick. I know I kind of jump around because I'm just trying to get this out of the way. This is from start to finish. So this is the very first pull right out of the box, this black line. And you notice right here at the top, which is about 7,500 RPMs dropping off, is like, is it going into valve flow? I mean, the spring's been in a while and this cam is not soft. But what I was noticing was it was getting rich. So, which I'm sure you guys noticed from the pools. It will go, when we're rolling in, because I'm going to show a whole slew of them so you can see what I'm talking about here in a second. But it'll start way rich in this area, like 9.0, 10.0, 11.0 range. Then it starts going normal, really lean about here. So between here, it's like almost 13 O's, 13.2. And then at the top, then it'll start being perfect, getting right around where it should be right here. And then it starts right here. And this part, it's back into now it's going 12.0 range when it was here. So you know what I didn't bring was air bleeds. I didn't think, this carburetor is really good. We were on the dyno before. It was really consistent. It kept the same air-fuel ratio throughout the pool. It was no big deal. No, the carburetor said, I don't know, I had enough of you. I can do whatever I want to do if I feel like being fat and lean at the same time. So that's what it did. So all I could do was change jets. And I mean to tell you, it was just, now Gary runs a dyno, but I wasn't going to take him away from this, but I had to drain all the fuel from all the fuel bowls. So there's 4 of them, and that's 8 jets to change. It takes more time than you would think. Even with me dumping the fuel, these fuel bowls hold a ton of fuel too. Anyway, took a while. So start off at 86 jets on every one of them. So then the first thing we did was, I did, was knock them down to 84. And then what it did, it was this dip here, which I don't have it here. What you would see happen is when I take out the 84, it wouldn't fall off here. It would start carrying it more. This line right here, this red line is actually the 84 jets right here. So that's only changing the jet. So if you look at it, and you can see what I'm talking about. So when it rolls in, because when you take out jet, you're taking it out of the whole run. So it's going to make it really lean in other spots. So if you look here, it's leaner here, so still rich. Then it's better here. Then you can see where it's almost the same. It's still really lean in this spots, even leaner here, so you can see right where it's definitely needs more fuel. And then it's where it needs less fuel. So anyway, after doing the 84, because this ended up being the better one, switched to 81s because it's only, I didn't have, like, why didn't you do 82s or something? Or I would have, but again, I also didn't bring enough jets because I'm like, oh, I've got my jet set. Yeah, my jet set has 4 jets, not 8. So I had to find one that had 8 of, which was 81, the next one. And what that did is it actually made it carry it a little bit further, so it spiked this one too. So it didn't bring up peak power in here range so much, but like peak power was like the same, but it carried this line just a little bit further, and torque was actually better. It actually had an 822 torque. But the problem is right in this range, it was like 13.6, which is way, way lean. And you might be saying, well, if you remember, the only reason why I ever put this on the dyno, because I want to check the air-fuel ratios because I'm going to put nitrous on it. And that's the reason why the top's off. So I can't have it going, if it was just one spot rich, it's fine, but not like this. This is like peak torque area, and it's like where it's dangerously lean. So you go hitting the nitrous, and it's already super lean there. Your plugs are saying, because trust me, I put a plug in it for each run too, just to see. Because the good thing about this fuel, it takes one run, you can see it on there. Sometimes pump gas, you got to make like 2 runs before you see anything. No, 1. Anyway, so the soldiers at 80, when I had the 81 jets in, were saying, you know, my spark plugs, they were saying, we're golden. The O2 sensor in this region says, I'm about to die. You're too lean. So anyway, this is with 84 jet. So just to show you, go back to this chart now. This will kind of show you what I mean. If you notice, the air-fuel ratio isn't on here. I mean, it says air fuels. That's just, we'll get to that in a minute. The air hat's not on there, so that's why the air fuels look funky. These are measured, which means it's got a turbine that pulls the air in, and then it has a fuel flow, and then it calculates the air-fuel ratio here. The problem is the air hat's not on because there's 2 carburetors, not 1, so that's not right. So it does have, we did have an O2 sensor, but it's not on this printout. So I'm actually viewing the O2 sensor, it just doesn't have it on the printout. But this is for all of you that don't have O2 sensors, but have your BCS. That's how many pounds per it takes to make horsepower. This can also tell you if you're rich or lean. Usually on gas, 440, 420 is about where you can go. If you're in the 3s, you're lean. So look at the run, you can see what I mean. This looks lean, but really the O2s were saying, we're extremely rich. And they're probably this because it's using so much of the pump shot on that. So that's the reason why it's probably rich there. So that probably needs to be adjusted still. But you look, now we're going way lean. 367, that's lean. 378, I mean, these are all through this entire part right here, lean. Then it's this part right here, happy. And then what you doing? Going back to fat. And that's why it's doing that drop off at the end. So 464. If I could just give it like between 420 or 440, I'd been happy. This is causing rich at the end. That's a loss of power. So it was like, ugh. The whole time go to the dyno just to be like, this engine, these carburetors aren't working. So, ugh, disgusting. So I'm sending the carburetors off, and that's why they're off. But I want to show you something else too. So this is for fun. This is stupid stuff here. I'm going to go ahead and, since I got the top off, I'm going to show you down inside the runner so you can see some of the cool stuff with this manifold. Okay, here's with the top off. Now I didn't clean any of this off, so all this here, I ported the manifold obviously too, but there's no fuel staining on this part. And what fuel staining you'll see in the inside of these ports, except for at the very back, so towards the end, all the way to, on the valve there, which the camera's doing a shitty job as usual of capturing that. But there at the back, that's where it is. There's any fuel staining was right around the valve where the very shiniest part is, which the camera will not capture. Right through there is it. The rest of it that you might see in these ports, like you see some here, which I'm trying my best to see it. Like you see it right there. What you're actually seeing is it looks like it's that, but what actually happened was me being a dummy. I had the carburetor still on here because I was putting the nitrous plate on, and I wanted to check to make sure everything would line up. So I'm just cracking open the fuel throttle to make the carburetors to make sure, you know, it's not binding with the solenoids or anything like that. And even though I thought the carburetor was empty, no, it's spraying fuel in. And this fuel will stain instantly. And just to show you what I mean, let me show you. This is just me dumping the fuel out of the bowls. Stains. This is the top plate. Stains. The plate has to be cut because the nitrous bar goes across, and that's going to interfere. So anyway, I thought I'd show you that. I also ran these. I have been. These are anti-reversion plates. They actually stick down in there. So just so you can get an idea. They were underneath the carburetor. So anyway, hope you got a look at that. Now to show you something stupid I did. It did help it. This is me being stupid. What you saw was we took the headers off the Camaro, I took the headers off the Camaro and I wanted to dyno with him. Now, obviously, his exhaust system couldn't hook up to it. Now, he's got fans that bring fresh air into the dyno cell, and also they have a way to expel it. However, it cannot keep up with a running engine, which I discovered. If you're watching the video, which you can go back and watch, click back for just a second, you'll see the room's filling up with gray smoke, and it's the exhaust fumes. The engine sounds amazing like that. The problem is it doesn't make as much power. So I've got it all graphed out so you can kind of show you, because this part is kind of cool. So for you guys that have dyno rooms, and you're like, I'm telling customers it makes a difference about having fresh air coming in. It totally does. Because I was like, well, these headers suck. And Gary was like, no, I bet that a lot of that's due to contamination in the room. It makes it do weird things. You really can almost throw these numbers out. So I'm going to show you. So this first black line, the blue line, sorry. This blue line right here is our first line run trying. So that's the very first one we did. Sounds cool, runs great and everything. It didn't make hardly any power, made like 1,030 right there. So if you look at that, you lost 30 horsepower from the headers. I don't think so. And he's like, I don't think you lost it because of that. He says, I think the room's contaminated. And so what he did, the next time he starts it up, and he lets the engine just idle longer in the room, even though he's got the fans and everything running. And if you looked at the chart here, you could tell that the fans itself, they're still stuck. I mean, that's 228 CFM from just that one hole. And there's actually a much bigger hole that's bringing in. So it's doing it's moving quite a bit of air, but not enough. So run 2, that's this black line. You'll see it like, oh, it looks better. Nope. A little bit better? No. That's because the room got even more contaminated. So what you see right here is this last pull we tried. And this is something really, because that, by the way, that's 900. It made like 999 with the room contaminated like that. So we took a 1,060 horsepower engine. We knocked 60 horsepower off. This one, we're like, okay, here's what we're going to do. So what he does is he takes the air bonnet, and you're going to see it. You could barely see it in the video, but he just sets it. So let's pretend this is the carburetor and this is the air bonnet. He just sets it like right on top of it like that. I'm like, man, it seems like it would disrupt flow. But the air bonnet actually goes up to where it's gathering fresh air. So that just sets it there. That's all he did. And I said, and we started the pull at a much higher RPM because we're going to make the pull really short so it doesn't have a chance to contaminate the room as fast. So he got the whole room air evacuated, starts it, and you're going to hear it in this run here, and I'll show you in just a second. Rolls right in, makes this little pull, and bam. Look how much better it does, only because they had the fresh air blowing in on that one thing. So if you're into stupid stuff, we do try stupid stuff, because this is totally worthless and helps none at all. I have no idea if the header's actually worse or better, because I can't tell you. You might say, what's different about your headers? Mine are 2 1/4 instead of 2 1/8. They're much shorter because they fit my car. They're so much easier to work on, though. So if they lost 10 horsepower, but they're easy to work on, I'm going to keep it. And mine's also got a merge collector, and it's 4.5 inches. So I don't know if the headers are better or not, but that was pretty something stupid we tried. So you might be asking yourself, man, I watched this whole video, and you ramble a lot. I know, right? But you might be saying, well, what are you going to do now? Well, the reason why it's off is because I'm sending the carburetors off. I wanted to send it to my usual carburetor guy, Mark Whiter, but he's so backed up I didn't get a chance. But this other carburetor guy got a hold of me, and he said, let me give it a whack. So I'm gonna be brave. I'm gonna send it off, see what he can't do. The suck part is it still has to go back on the dyno again. So it's like this dyno session wasn't too bad. It's nothing like the dyno mule sessions. Those are really expensive because they're so much longer. But still gonna be like more money just to figure this out before I go. Because I could see it tearing up something. This would be one of those cases where someone says, look, the spark plugs looked fine and I melted a motor on nitrous. Would be perfect example of this, because the spark plugs looked fine, but they did. I'm joking. I wish I'd taken a picture of the spark plug. Be like, that dude looks perfect. But through this range right here, it was not perfect. So, and by the way, peak torques usually, which is in this area, is usually where you have the highest cylinder pressure, so you're most likely to burn stuff. So if you ever have one of those nitrous engines, you wonder why you melted something and your spark plug looks good. It could be because you're in a certain area, the air fuel ratio wasn't good. So anyway, back on the dyno it goes. And I have to cut out that top plate just to make the nitrous plates work. So it'll be a while. So anyway, that's the reason why it looks like a sad dog right now. But it will be put back together and get the carburetors off. I actually put them in a Sniper EF5 box because it's funny when I send them off. But anyway, thanks for watching, guys. Remember, this video shows I'm no Superman. And anyway, thanks for watching, and you guys take care.